Hello, I am George Rodriguez, a business director specializing in the agribusiness market in Latin America. And today I want to share with you a ruling from the São Paulo courts that, in my reading as a senior agronomist and senior chemical formulator, structurally changes the rules of aerial spraying of pesticides, adjuvants, fertilizers and biologicals in Brazil and, as a consequence, across our entire region. The second chamber reserved for the environment of the São Paulo Court of Justice from the Second Court of Jardinópolis has unanimously upheld the first instance decision that ordered a sugar and ethanol mill to pay 2,400,000 reais in environmental damages to the Municipal Environment Fund. In addition, it ordered the company to refrain from aerial spraying of pesticides within less than 250 meters of water sources without observing technical and safety standards, on pain of a fine of 1 million reais. The record shows that the mill applied highly toxic chemical products without respecting the minimum distance to water courses, exposing water resources, local biodiversity and public health to imminent contamination risks, and causing the death of a large number of bees by intoxication in a neighbouring apiary. The rapporteur of the appeal, Justice Luís Fernando Nishi, held that Brazilian environmental law follows the integral risk theory. In his own words, by choosing extensive monoculture dependent on agrochemicals, the mill takes on the position of guarantor of the ecological balance around its operations. The profit obtained from the polluting activity justifies internalizing all negative externalities, regardless of any demonstration of negligence or lack of skill in handling the products, since the damage occurred during the exercise of the company's own business activity, and in an area whose cultivation was also its responsibility. The causal link was therefore established between the improper dispersion of pesticides in breach of national law and the environmental damage that reached water sources, vegetation of the permanent preservation area of the Rio Pardo and the neighbouring apiary. The judge also noted that the compensation is not administrative sanction in nature, but civil compensation for the loss of ecosystem services proportionate to the company's economic capacity and the scale of environmental risk. Justices Paulo and Miguel Petroni Neto completed the bench and the decision was unanimous. Now let me translate this ruling into the language of those who operate in the field and those who formulate inputs. The express adoption of the integral risk theory, combined with the objective criterion of a minimum safety distance from water sources and the valuation of ecosystem services such as pollination, sets a new bar for the market. We are no longer facing a debate about fault, willful conduct or lack of skill from the applicator. We are facing an objective, integral and economically relevant liability that spreads across the entire agricultural chain, from the grower to the industries of pesticides, adjuvants, biologicals and fertilizers, and that directly affects the contractual design between mill, third-party applicator, insurer and input supplier. From a formulation standpoint, this scenario points to a clear route. The winning technologies in the coming cycles will be those that simultaneously reduce drift, volatilization and runoff, and that increase selectivity towards non-target organisms. Modern suspension concentrates, oil dispersion formulations, aqueous microencapsulated systems with controlled release, suspended capsules with functional polymers, and methylated oil-based formulations with selective surfactants will hold clear competitive advantage. On the adjuvant side, controlled molecular weight anti-drift agents, methylated seed oils from traceable feedstocks, next-generation silicone-based surfactants used in safe application windows, deposition agents, evaporation retardants and droplet spectrum management technologies with air induction nozzles, pre-orifice chambers, and assisted electrostatic deposition systems will gain ground. For biologicals, the ruling opens a strategic growth window. Buffer zones near permanent preservation areas, apiaries, rural schools and watercourses will increasingly demand integrated pest management programs with bacteria, fungi, entomopathogenic viruses, pheromones, plant extracts and functional microbiome. This is precisely the band where the formulator that masters fermentation, shelf stability, appropriate carriers, protection technologies for biological active ingredients against ultraviolet radiation and compatibility with conventional pesticides has a concrete opportunity to grow in revenue and in technical relevance with the industrial client. For fertilizers, the ruling drives the efficiency agenda. Foliar formulations with low phytotoxicity carriers, organic chelating agents, functional amino acids, algae-based biostimulants, standardized humic and fulvic acids, and slow-release soil systems will now compose packages that reduce the number of operations, potential drift and regulatory pressure on the client operation while sustaining productivity and harvest quality. The upsides in my reading are quite concrete. First, the decision protects water sources, biodiversity and pollinators. And pollinators are a biological asset of agriculture itself, not a neighbor that can be sacrificed. Second, the ruling technically rewards those who invest in modern formulation and value-added technical service and drains competition based on raw price with no added value. Third, it enhances stewardship, application traceability, and good practice programs, ground in which industry has much to offer to partner formulators. Fourth, it creates demand for hybrid solutions, combining precision chemistry with biologicals and foliar nutrition, precisely where the value frontier is moving. Fifth, it supports long-term contracts between raw material supplier, formulator, and industrial client with clear metrics of environmental compliance. The downsides must be said with the same frankness. The integral risk theory, by waiving the analysis of fault, also penalizes the diligent operator that invested in technology, training, and compliance. Environmental insurance premiums are likely to rise across the board, making operations more expensive for those who do it right. There is a real risk of cascading litigation with high indemnity claims and no case-by-case technical review, which may produce poorly calibrated decisions and contractual insecurity. There is also a political and regulatory risk of broad restrictions on aerial spraying, catching legitimate technologies such as certified agricultural drones and aircraft with homologated anti-drift nozzles, which would penalize precisely the safest technologies and concentrate environmental damage in saturated ground application windows. The practical recommendation to the formulator, to the raw material manufacturer, and to the commercial manager operating in Latin America is objective. Review your portfolio through the lens of drift, volatilization, selectivity, and compatibility with biological programs. Prioritize raw materials with clear chemical identity, complete toxicological dossier, and documented traceability. Build a technical package that combines formulation, anti-drift adjuvants, application protocol, applicator training, and auditable evidence of compliance. Discuss with your industrial client supply contracts that include stewardship, drift monitoring, and objective operational safety indicators. Get closer to buffer zone programs with biologicals and foliar nutrition, because that is where the environmental bar will tighten first, and that is where technical differentiation is rewarded with margin. The signal from the São Paulo court is unequivocal. The environmental bill is now objective, integral, and expensive. The industry that offers a complete technical solution wins. Those who insist on selling raw liters lose relevance. We are therefore facing a real opportunity for commercial and technical repositioning for formulators that want to lead the next cycle of agribusiness in Latin America, a cycle in which environmental compliance, agronomic efficiency, and economic return cease to be conflicting vectors and become complementary vectors within the portfolio. To close, I want to leave 3 practical challenges to the business manager watching this video. First, map today which SKUs in your portfolio would objectively struggle to pass a stewardship audit required by an insurer. Second, list 3 internal reformulation projects capable of moving the portfolio to low drift technologies within 12 months, prioritized by volume, revenue, and regulatory exposure. Third, review your standard supply contract to include clauses on compliance, monitoring, and third-party applicator training. If this content makes sense to you, leave your comment, follow the channel, and share it with the technical and commercial team of your operation. Here at AgroLatam Intel, we turn regulation, technology, and formulation into measurable competitive advantage. A warm hug and see you in the next video.